1, 2, 3, clap. 1, 2, 3, clap. All right, that's good. You are the most beautiful cheerleader in the world.
Yeah, right? My dreams have come true.
All right, ready?
I'm ready.
Are you all ready?
All ready.
Are you hyped?
Yes.
All right, bet.
Hello, beautiful listeners. It's a pleasure to finally be speaking to you all. I am Manuel.
And I'm Luis, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about how planning allows you to set priorities, how it allows you to finish the stuff you actually have to do so you can do the stuff you want to do, and how all that relates to creating a healthy routine for your body and for your mind. And we're going to give you some useful techniques to use as soon as possible. So let's get to it. All right, Manuel. First question of the night or the morning or whenever you're listening to this.
Very excited.
Why would a person want to plan? Because it sounds like a drag, just like sitting down every night or every morning, just like going, okay, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do next week? That just sounds time consuming. Why would one plan?
So, when you put it that way, of course it sounds like a drag, but I think the important thing to take into account is that I think if you are doing everything within your capabilities to do what you want to do, to accomplish what you want to accomplish, there will get a point where you need to plan in order to be as effective as you possibly can be. I know me personally as a student, as with part-time jobs and all these other things that I do, I find it very difficult to not plan and still be effective.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I actually wrote down a couple of things as well because I wondered for a while. I was like, why would I plan? It feels like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I found out that whenever I'm stressed and I'm like, just have too much on my plate, sitting down and writing out all the things I have to do and what's actually important and what's not really important, all of that just reduces the stress in general. Does that happen to you at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a huge concept that changed the way I look at my planning is this concept of decision fatigue.
Okay.
So
What do you mean?
Because when you are constantly having to make decisions about what you need to be doing next,
Yeah.
that wears you down, especially when you're a very busy person. And when the decisions that you make have high stakes, like I either do this or I do that, and if I do one wrong, it results in me failing this class or me failing this other class, for example, that can put a lot of stress on you. And you will then be ineffective at whatever it is that you're trying to do. But if you can just plan things ahead of time and know that this will get done in this time and the next thing will get done in the next time, you are then relieving yourself of this need to make this huge decision. And it may not even be a huge decision, but those little decisions do add up to cause stress in your life.
So essentially what you're telling me is it takes away from that whole process of, oh, okay, I actually have to sit down and get this and organize what I have to do. You take that away because it's been already done. You already know what you're going to do.
Right. If you allocate time, so if you plan to plan, essentially, then it just makes your life easier at the end of the day.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Yeah, so that actually covers the second thing I had, which was increasing productivity in a general sense. It just overall it does. But something even more important that I think it does cover is setting priorities straight. Because when you're planning, that's the time where you get to decide what you're going to do. That's the time where you're alone and you get to say, I'm in charge of my day. No one else is. I'm not going to wake up and work on someone else's stuff if I don't want to. And for me, that's like the ultimate control that you can have over your life. Being able to wake up and like, all right, I'm only working the stuff that I decided to work on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I absolutely see what you're saying. I think having that level of control over what you are getting done really gives you an ability to do those things better. I think if you are constantly doing things that you don't want to do,
yes,
it makes you very unhappy.
Very, very unhappy. And it just does. So one of the things that actually happens is people come to me, and I guess to you as well. They're like, man, I just don't have time. I just don't have time to do all this stuff. Like, I don't have time to study for this test. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to play the guitar. I don't have time to do all these different things that I want to do. The only thing that comes to my mind is the following. Imagine you went out for work, you went out for school today, and you came back home to your apartment, and you found out that you left the faucet open, and your whole apartment is flooded. The big question is, are you going to find time to fix it, to repair it? You better.
Yeah, you have no choice.
You have no choice. Why? Because that's a priority.
Yeah.
So you can tell me you ain't got no time. Like, what is this?
Right.
So what that brings me to is think about all the time that you've wasted doing someone else's stuff and or just on your phone. Like, you're doing something, it's like, yeah, I can totally multitask. Let me just go on Instagram real quick. And then that SpongeBob meme shows up 20 years later. That's the
that is exactly what happens. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think one of the scenarios that comes to my mind when you say that is, do I have time to work out before I study? And that, what usually ends up happening is when I choose I don't have time, I usually end up just wasting that time that I went to use for studying.
100%.
Because I'm not as happy when I'm studying, and I don't end up being nearly as productive if I just went and did the things that support my mental clarity.
Do you also feel like you're more productive when you have more things to do in general? Like, you use your time better?
Absolutely, yeah. So that, I think,
not more productive, more efficient.
No,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you get to this state of flow where you are stimulated enough. And for my psychology friends out there, this is the Yerkes-Dodson law. So,
do you want to explain that law?
Yeah. So it basically says that there is when you are too understimulated, you will not be motivated to do any work, and when you are too stimulated, you will be too anxious to do any work. And in order for you to be optimally efficient, you need to have this happy medium of stimulation and that optimal state of motivation will allow you to be most efficient.
Does routine help with that? Creating a routine?
I definitely think so. I think if you have things to do, I think, yeah, I mean, having some level of things to do is important, because I always think back to the scenario in which I have only one thing that I need to do in a whole day.
Oh,
and,
no.
And what happens? Thing. What happens with that one thing?
Oh, you're like, yeah, I got time. I can do this later. It's just like this one thing I have to do. And then you actually start doing that thing, and you do 5 other things at the same time, because, I mean, you only have that one thing to do.
Absolutely.
It drags out.
Yeah, so you wake up at 8 knowing you have this one thing to do, and then 8 p.m. rolls around. It's been 12 hours, and you haven't done a single thing to start.
Isn't that the life of every college student?
I think at least once.
At least once. You make that mistake at least once.
Yes, until you either are very happy by your decision and you keep doing it, or you are very upset at yourself and you stop.
Oh my goodness. All right, so you're talking about taking time to go to the gym, taking time to do the things you want, and planning for the stuff you actually want to do. But you touched on school.
Yes.
And something I wanted to discuss was, have you ever heard of the forgetting table?
I have not.
So the forgetting table is, imagine a chart, so x-axis, y-axis, and you're talking about how many times so imagine you learn something for the first time. And this forgetting table tells you that if you don't review it, if you don't go over the material again, in 3 days, you forgot like something like 60, 70%.
Right.
Of whatever stuff you had. But now if you review that on the next day also, so you learn and then you review it for 20 minutes only, then you retain more. And if you do that 5 or 6 days in a row, you almost don't forget anything that you learned. That tells me a few things. First, if you plan ahead, you can organize that so you're not freaking out the day before the test and all that stuff. But something that strikes me the most is that people don't know how to learn. And that's something no one teaches in school. And I don't mean like, oh, here's how 5 tips to memorize this med school terms. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, do you learn through audio? Do you learn through video? Do you learn by doing? And you ask people, and they tell you, yeah. I'm an auditive person. Like, I'm kinesthetic. I have to touch things. I have to actually do it. They tell you they know who they are and how they learn. They don't apply it. Why? Well, I don't know. What kind of learner you are?
So I think with that comes a lot of questions, because I think you can be a different learner in different subjects and in different things that you do.
Okay.
Because the way that one studies for math is not going to be the same way that one studies for a science class that's basically memorization based, or the way that one studies for a chemistry class.
Okay.
All of those different subjects have different ways of learning them. And I think it takes a lot of willingness to adapt and experimentation.
Oh, willingness to adapt. I like it.
So it takes a lot. It takes a lot of self-experimentation to really be able to figure out what works best for you. So I think for me personally, I know myself when it comes to like biology, for example. I need to be able to draw what's going on. I need to be able to know this interacts with this in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to draw that to myself and explain it to myself. And I think,
what about math?
So math is like, there's no amount of staring at a formula that is going to teach you how to do math. You need like, especially with algebra, it's like you need to mess up doing algebra a bunch of times.
Get your hands dirty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get your hands dirty, get yourself into a huge mess.
Yes.
And then eventually try to dig yourself out, or find somebody who knows how to do it better than you to show you exactly where you went wrong.
Yes, I like that.
So that is something I think people often have too much pride to go and find the help that they need.
That is true. That is true. But when you're studying though, so you're saying you study in different ways depending on the topic you're doing.
Yes.
Do you ever take breaks? Or do you allocate like 4-hour, 8-hour window to just sit down and study?
So I do both, I think.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is that, yes, I'll allocate the 4 to 8 hour window to study, but I'll realize that if I'm sitting here banging my head against the desk, not getting anything, that I need to get up and do something different for like 5-10 minutes, get myself a snack, a coffee, some water, whatever, and that will re-stimulate me to want to come back and
Have you found your limit yet for that focus time span? It's a hard one. It's hard to find it.
Yeah, no, it is hard to find, and I don't think it's concrete either. I think it's one of those things where when you train yourself to get good at that sort of a thing, you get better at it.
Yeah.
I know when you are in the middle of a very heavy course load, for example, you can train yourself to get very good at studying for very long periods of time, and when you fall out of practice, you can lose some of that.
Yeah, you build on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Something that works for me, and that's just because I've learned, and I guess when I was taking many, many courses, is taking breaks changes the game. And I know that I can study somewhere between 30 and 50 minutes without really stopping.
Right.
Depending on what's the material, if I'm really interested or if I'm not. But if I go anything over 50 minutes, my productivity just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So what I do is, and I guess for anyone listening to this, is if you have a 4-hour window to study, break that down into 3 or 4 sessions and do, let's say, 50 minutes and a 10-minute break. Another 50 minutes and a 10-minute break. And by a 10-minute break, I do not mean going on your phone, going on Instagram, staying in the same place. Like, get out. If you're at a library, go outside. If you're at your house, go outside. If you're outside, go inside. I don't care. Just go somewhere different.
Exactly.
It's very much needed, and people don't do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people, they will spend like a whole day in a library and think that they spent their whole day being productive.
Yeah, no. No.
Yeah, they'll spend 12 hours in the library thinking, "Oh, I spent 12 hours in the library and I still have so much more left to do." And I think the problem is not that you're not allocating enough time to studying, you're just studying ineffectively.
Yes.
And when you are doing things ineffectively, you're just wasting a bunch of time. And yeah,
Yes,
so I think allowing yourself to become more efficient at the things that you're already doing is a huge way to make your planning a lot easier on yourself and make yourself have more free time to do the things that you want to do.
Yeah. It's still on the topic, I guess. Why would you want to plan? I think more than anything else, it's about doing the things you want to do. And what I mean by that is not just ignore everything else that you have to do. It's no, allocate the time for the stuff, the so-called have-tos and the musts, I guess. And once it's done, it's done. So if today you have 8 hours to do work, allocate 4 hours. And with the other 4, go be a human. Right? Go do something else.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't care what it is. I don't care if your thing is, I don't know, practice your, what is it, dunks? Basketball?
Yes.
So if that's your thing, go for it. Right? Like, just use your time. If your thing is play FIFA, if your thing is to go swim, if your thing is to go to the beach, sure, I don't care. Just use 4 hours to study or to work or to get whatever you need done, and then go be a human being.
Yeah, I agree. And in the end, that'll do so much more for your sanity and your productivity, that you'll be more productive allocating less time to those things than you ever would be if you just pretended that you needed all of that time for that one thing.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna break that down. Just try to repeat that slowly, because that means a lot.
Yeah, so I think that if you are in a bad headspace,
Yeah,
when you are doing the things that you think you need to be doing, you are gonna actually need all that time. But when you put yourself in a better headspace by doing the things that you actually want to do, by taking that second to go on the run, to play that game of basketball, to hang out with your friends, you'll come back and you'll be way more efficient, and you'll have way less of a need to just waste your whole day away in a library.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, let me backtrack. Some people have been planning already, and they may be listening to this. But what I have to say is that I do think that even if you have been planning for a while now, there's still a pretty high chance that you're doing it wrong. And here's what I mean. You have to figure out what times work best for you. Let that sink in for a while, because figuring out what times work best for you goes back to what times of the day can I do certain things and what times of the day I cannot. In other words, there was this week-long, I can call it program, assessment, or whatever, but it comes from a book. The book is called When, and it's When, The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing by Daniel H. Pink. But here's what he proposed, and I actually did it, and the results were kind of insane. So for 7 days, a whole week, you're going to set an alarm every 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Once the alarm rings or goes off, you're going to ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, what am I doing? Number 2, what is my mental alertness? So mental alertness, and that goes from 0 to 10. And what is my physical energy from 0 to 10? And you do that every day for 7 days. If you're awake. Whenever you're awake, you're doing it. You're setting it. Well, I did that. Here's a few things that actually came out of that. Is thing number 1. When I wake up, I'm not as awake as I am 2 hours later. Now, that is obvious.
Fair.
What is not obvious? That 6 hours later, on the dot, 6 hours after I wake up, I'm tired. Always. Doesn't matter what time I wake up, which is weird. Right?
Yeah.
If you think, and in this book, what he's saying is people don't have like one peak throughout their days. It's not just, hey, I have my peak time at 12 and noon. No, he's saying there's two of them. There's one before, there's a trough, and then there's another one. Now it's up to you by doing this exercise to figure out which ones are your times. For me, is 1 hour after I wake up for like 2 or 3 hours, so that window.
Right.
And then later in the day from like 7 to 11 p.m., which is also kind of, I think I'm pretty average. He describes this as being the norm in a general sense, but people are different. So it's not only about being an early bird or a night owl. It's really about figuring out what works out for you. And the final thing is doing analytical work. So if you have to read something, or if you have to send emails, or if you have to do like task oriented, I guess, things, you have to figure out what the time window for that is. In my case, it's the morning. And there's another time where you're creative, which in my case is the 7 to 11. 7-Eleven, shout out.
Sponsor us.
Sponsor us. And what I mean by that is, why would I try to create a post for Unsunk, for example, at 7 a.m.?
When you're
It
clearly
makes
not
no
awake.
sense.
Yeah.
It makes zero sense. People don't know that. If you were to guess, actually, let's do that, Manuel. Let's do that. If you were to guess, what are kind of your hours and what are kind of your peaks and your trough? And a week later from today, to today's recording, you're going to bring back the results. You're going to do this and we're going to see what happens.
I like it. Okay. So my days, usually I wake up at 5 and then I would say I'm not that awake at 5, but I just have to be up at that time. So, and I would say that I have this sort of peak when I get to where I'm going, which is usually school.
So like you wake up, do your thing, go drive, and then when you arrive, you're good
and
to
I
go.
think by the time I actually get there and I drink my coffee on the way, I'm a pretty.
Do you drink the coffee as soon as you wake up or no?
No, I wait about 2 hours after I've woken up to allow my body to release cortisol, and then I also get the spike from the caffeine later.
So are you saying it's not a good idea to drink coffee as soon as you wake up?
I'm a big believer that it's not the best idea. I'm not saying that I follow that advice all the time, but I think it's better if you let your body wake itself up.
Yeah.
And then if you need the coffee a little bit later in the day, which I know I do, then...
Same. On the side note, if I drink water first thing that I wake up for the first hour, it works just like coffee. It's weird.
Yeah. No, I find that if I just wake up and I eat something and I have my breakfast, I think that works a little bit better, and then have my coffee in a couple hours.
Yeah. All right. So you get to the place, you drink your coffee. What's up?
Yeah. So I think that's my peak right there in the morning. I have that...
what do you do
burst
then,
of energy. So that usually is a free period for me. I work in 2 different labs. So I usually go and do lab work, and I am.
What do you do in your lab?
So I either work as a teaching assistant, and that involves setting up experiments for students. Mm-hmm. And I also do research, genetics research. So I'll go and do that. So it depends.
You do that.
Yeah, I'll go do that. I'm not sure they want a molecular biology explanation on this podcast right
I think
now.
we'll skip that for now.
Yeah. So I'm going to go and do some lab work is usually what that ends up being at that time in the morning. And I find myself to be very alert and very awake and able to do that. And then around lunchtime, I do feel like I have a trough.
A trough.
Yeah.
Is it... Some people say it's the whole food coma or coma.
Yes.
Does that happen to you after lunch or sometimes before lunch?
I think it can happen before quite often.
So it's about the time, not about the food necessarily.
I think it can be about both.
Okay.
I think it can happen regardless of the food, but I think the especially when you have certain types of food, can be amplified by that. So
Or I mean, yes, obviously, heavier foods you would expect to
yes, exactly. Like I think you'll have a much easier time having a salad for lunch than you would like.
Yeah.
But I think that's my trough. And then at some point in the evening, I think I would have my next spike.
All right, so you're some version of what I am. So you're assuming we're both kind of the norm.
I'd say so.
All right, so let's see. A week from now, let's see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Let's see how that goes. What was I gonna say? Let's see if my brain brings it back to me. Oh. All right, so what if you have an important meeting and it is at noon and it is at your trough and you have to be alert? What would you do?
So,
with all the stuff that we mentioned so far,
yeah,
what's the solution?
So that oftentimes is the case. I find myself, even though I know I'm more tired at certain times, I don't really necessarily get to pick what I'm doing at what times during the day, just because of how packed my schedule tends to be.
Yeah.
And during those times, I find that when there's like a unique event that's happening at 12 noon, I tend to be alert just out of the, I guess, little bit of anxiousness that I get out of having to go do that thing.
Okay.
So if I have a presentation at 12:30.
Oh, so your own mind already kind of.
Yeah. So you have.
Interesting.
You have this sort of. You kind of psych yourself out in a sense.
Got it. You know what I do? I know I have my trough 6 hours after I wake up, right?
Correct.
Well, if I know I have something at 12, if I have an option, I'm gonna wake up a little after that,
Sure.
after 6 a.m. So I would do 8, for example. Or if I know the trough is coming, I have two options. Either take a nappuccino. We can talk about a nappuccino, what it is in a second. Or just drink some coffee before. A nappuccino is... You take nappuccinos, right?
I don't get to anymore these days,
No?
but I used to.
A nappuccino is essentially... It's a shot of espresso, for example, and with the optimal time of a nap, which is... Pretty sure it's somewhere around 26 minutes, 30 minutes, some version of that. So what you do is you take a shot of coffee, so you take some caffeine, and you take a nap right away. Right, so coffee, sleep. You wake up 30 minutes later like a baby. You're a new person. It's scary.
Yeah, no.
Freaking science, man.
It's a great tool. And it's definitely something I used to do when I had somewhere to sleep around where I was being productive.
But where would you sleep? Just go back to the car? What would you do?
Oh, no. Well, this was back when I lived on campus, so then I could just walk back to my dorm.
Goodness.
But these days, I guess, tough it out for the whole.
I've done that, man. Like, go to the car. Just like, do I have 30 minutes? Am I dead? Yep, let's go for it.
Okay, that's
Like, it's either that,
Yeah.
take a random nap in the middle of the day, or not be productive. And I would rather be productive.
No, that's
efficient.
totally fair. That's totally fair.
Now that we discussed, and I guess by now it's pretty clear what's the difference between being busy and being efficient, being productive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess by now that's pretty good. But now you listener, beautiful listener, you have some tools to actually learn and try to apply this whole week long, and you can do your things. You can send your results to our Instagram, probably at Unsunk Official. But now let's give you some tools, some techniques, some apps that we use to actually stay on track. Manuel, I guess, what's the first one? What's the first one for you?
So I cannot live without Google Calendar, and I'm sure Luis will feel the same way about
Yes.
this. My Google Calendar looks like a Tetris board. And
It's a rainbow.
Yeah, it is rainbow. And I think the reason I set it up that way and I didn't just...
Wait, backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
Why does it look colorful? What's up with that? Like, explain a little bit.
Yeah. So I think the reason that I set it up that way is because like I was mentioning earlier, that I really want to avoid having to make random decisions throughout my day. So if I can just have my day scheduled up front, it just makes it a lot easier when I know at this time I'm going to be doing this, and it's scheduled already, and there's no need for me to stress about it.
Yep.
and that's the reason it's set up that way. And obviously I have it color coded just for the sake of similar activities on different days have the same color, and it just makes it easier for
I hear
me
you. So you look at it, you already know what it is.
yeah,
right off the
it's
bat.
a quick glance that I can
Yeah.
do, and I know.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. Google Calendar it's really good in a sense where it's easy to keep track of stuff. You can write it on the spot. But there is something that it cannot beat a planner. And here's what I mean. The planner, you can only write so many things there. In the Google Calendar, you can just fit it all in. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of the techniques that people use is if you had to accomplish 3 things today, what would they be? And they tell you, like, use a sticky note. Like, what is that even? A Post-it.
Yeah.
Use a Post-it. You can only fill that in. No, like, tiny handwriting, no cheating, just, like,
Right.
only that stuff. Do you have a planner? Like a physical planner, a book?
No, I don't find myself using a planner.
Really?
I just
That surprises me.
What I tend to do is I make to-do lists, and that I guess serves a
To-do
sort of-
lists, okay. They kind of go there.
Right. And they're separate from my Google Calendar. They're not redundant in any sort of way.
Got it. It's funny because, well, you were here in the recording of the previous episodes, and I mentioned that book, Essentialism. He says, it's not about what you say yes to, it's about what you say no to. And here's the trick. If you have a planner, when someone comes up to you, they're like, hey, can we do this? Are you free on this date, this time? If you only have your Google Calendar, you're going to look there, you're like, yeah, sure, I'm free. And you're going to write it down and tell them. Now, if you have a planner that you keep at home, you're going to tell them, listen, send me an email, send me a text later because I don't have my planner here with me. We can check later, I can check my planner. Now, if you get at home and you understand that that specific meeting or that specific event or whatever it was doesn't make sense for you, you have time to think about it. And you don't have to go through that awkwardness of staring at the person like, I'm sorry, but I can't. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's almost like, it's almost cheating. You just like go home, you get to sit down. Just like, listen, my inner self. Does this make sense for me?
Yeah.
I promise I never did that to you.
I hope so.
Now, though, the planner part. It's the most important part. Like when you sit down to plan stuff, because that's when you get to say no to things. And when you're planning, I see those like entrepreneurial posts and stuff, and they're like, yeah, from 5 to 9 you grind on this, like you meditate, you go to the gym, you eat your breakfast, you do all this stuff. From 9 to 5 you go to your day job, you do all that stuff. From 5 to 9 p.m., 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., you go to the gym, you work on your side hustle, and from 10 to 6 or 10 to 5 you sleep like a baby. Like it's, yeah, and you look at that post, you're like, yes, let's go. There's a huge problem with that. You know, all that stupid stuff that we gotta do, like eat, sleep, take shower, go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, all that stuff.
Yes.
Where does that go? Driving, commuting.
Yeah. I spend like 10 hours a week driving right now.
Exactly. Dude, Google scares me because they sent me an email telling me how many hours I spent on the car in the past month. 57 hours.
That's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the amount of gas we spent. I'm sorry, environment. I could be working another job, like sort of thing.
Yeah.
But when you're planning, you have to account for those things. You have to account for all the stupid stuff like going to the bathroom. Like
Absolutely.
taking a shower. It's just like,
Yeah. Give yourself time to be a healthy organism.
be a healthy being.
Yes.
And it seems so simple, yet it's hard to do.
Yeah, and it's not even that I think it's hard to do. I think people just don't think about it in the first place. It's one of those things that you take for granted, and I think that you don't realize that you're doing. You just do it without thinking about it, and so you think it doesn't require planning.
It's hard to allocate the time, and you're like, do I really need like 30 minutes to get ready in the morning? Do I really need an hour? Do I really need 15 minutes? Can I do it in 5? And then you find yourself struggling.
Right.
Like, don't do that. It's okay. You're a human being. Just take the time to do all that stuff. That's okay.
No, absolutely. And I think when people always tell me that they think I wake up way too early for the time that I leave for places.
You wake up at 5, right?
Yeah, I wake up at 5. I leave my house by 7, and that's 2 hours.
Yeah.
And
Do you
people
get breakfast and stuff?
right. Yeah.
You also run in the morning, don't you?
Yeah. So I take time to run. I take time to eat breakfast. I take time to take care of
fine.
myself.
Perfectly
like
fine.
all of these things, and I think trying to cram that into like 30 minutes is just not
Not healthy.
not good for you. Your mental health is just gonna, you're stressed already when you leave
wake
your
up
house.
stressed.
Yeah, you wake
Yeah.
up stressed, and it's just not something that's good for you.
I created the habit. Me and my books. It came from the 4-hour work week. There's so many books. I got it. Yeah.
You and your squares.
By the way, just let's make something really clear. I like to read books, but I also listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's not about reading itself. It's about getting the information. It's about learning. So
Absolutely.
if someone's giving you crap and they're like, yeah, no, you gotta read, you gotta do this. It's like, no, hold up. It's about learning. It's different. On that note, this book, he tells you, it's like, do not check your email until noon. Because here's what happens on a day-to-day basis. People have their phones right next to them when they wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So, alarm goes off, whatever it was. They get the phone, they're like, oh, okay, just like snooze. They snooze for like 10 minutes, 15, which turns into 30, whatever. When they actually wake up, first thing they do is WhatsApp, Instagram. So they're already like sending messages. Their time schedules about like responding to people right off the bat. And they open their email. And when they open their email in their calendar, they're looking at it. They got 5 meetings today, 2 tests tomorrow, 3 assignments due, and they have to go to work in 30 minutes. Bruh, you wake up, the world is ending for you.
Yeah, you're already a ball of stress, and,
Yes.
you haven't even gotten out of your bed yet.
Yes. And no one talks about it. It's so plain and simple. Why does it have to take that long for us to figure that out? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think having those sort of healthy boundaries for yourself will really just make all the
that's
difference. So it's definitely something that you should take into account. It's not good for you to be always on, and I think allowing you that time to decompress or to get to a point where you will be able to handle that information better is definitely something that you should do.
I love it. It's not always good. It's not good to be always on. I like that. I have a question for you. Can you tell me about the power of procrastination?
Oh, so
Do you
what I'm doing right
procrastinate?
now, yeah.
Yeah. Do you procrastinate? Why do you procrastinate? Do you not? What's the? Give me the tea.
Yeah, so I think procrastination has received a bad connotation just because I think a lot of people use it poorly.
Okay.
And it's one of those things where you need to assess the urgency of the things that you're doing, as well as the importance. If I have a paper due in a week and I have an exam tomorrow, I'm going to study for the test. I'm not going to write my paper and then fail my test. So there's a reason why you would put off writing the paper until after the exam. And that's a very clear-cut example, but I think it's something that you can utilize on a smaller scale with many things.
How so?
Because if you allow yourself to take care of the things that are important and need to get done quickly, then you essentially are taking care of, you're essentially happier about your decisions. Because if you are taking care of small, unimportant tasks that don't need to get done right now.
Small, unimportant tasks.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're getting done with these small, unimportant tasks that don't need to get done and you're ignoring the bigger issues in your life,
Yeah. Yeah.
you will essentially just be unhappy with all of your decisions.
Yeah.
So it's very important. I think that's what it comes down to, is being happy with what you are doing.
Now, procrastination is a funny thing because have you ever procrastinated in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. We all have for
Yeah.
something. Doesn't matter what it is. We've done it at least once. And you are going to find people, like probably sitting right next to you or something, that support procrastination. In a sense, they're like, man, like, I get this thing done. Like,
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get it done. I get it done.
Yeah.
Now, if you know you're going to get it done and you know you're going to set off to the last minute and you're going to, like, that's how you're going to do it, why are you stressed? Why don't you use that in your favor?
Yeah.
If you know somehow you manage to procrastinate for days, and when the assignment or project is due in 10 hours, you get it done, you're telling me you could have gotten it done in 10 hours 5 days ago,
That's true.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's bad planning. However, if you're still telling me, no, I just like to procrastinate, and that's just my way of being, that's how nature created me.
Yeah, or they thrive on
They thrive.
under the pressure of
Yes, under the
needed-
pressure. That's people say that. That's
yeah,
true.
that's justification you hear most often.
Yeah, and if you thrive under that, use that in your favor. I don't care. Like, procrastinate, sure, but when you're the night before, just be ready. Don't complain.
Oh no, yeah, for sure. If you're gonna pull the all-nighter, just be ready to be useless the next day. You're gonna have nothing but troughs that whole day. So
Nothing but troughs.
nothing but troughs.
I love it. Do you have you ever heard of the urgency table?
I believe from you.
From me?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, you invited me to a presentation about it, I believe.
Oh, really? True.
Yeah, do you
Okay,
remember
so wow. Okay, I did not remember that.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I gave a presentation, a workshop on actually being effective and being productive. And one of the things that I mentioned was creating a urgency table. What that means is on the top of a post-it, you're going to write urgent, not urgent. And on the sides of that post-it, you're going to write important and not important. And I usually do the not with an exclamation point. I guess that I just created it for whatever reason.
For emphasis.
Now, you can only put a couple of things in each of them. What's urgent and important, you get it done now. I don't care what you're doing. What's urgent and not important, and then you go through the motions. You're just like, what's urgent, not important? What's important, not urgent, not urgent, not important? What's not urgent and not important? I promise you, you're going to keep writing that down for like 2 weeks until you actually give up on it. You're just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
So that's a good way to do things. Like if you're stressed about it, doing this little table, which by the way, if you cannot visualize what we're talking about, go on the Instagram again at Unsunk Official. That post is right there. Okay, it's like a cross, and you're gonna see urgent, not urgent, important, not important. And
how do you find yourself fitting that into the rest of your planning? So how does that work in conjunction with your planner and your calendar, for
with
example?
all the other 20 different planning methods
Yeah.
I
So
have.
so when do you find yourself using that? Is that like an everyday thing? Is that when you need it thing? Is that
It's on the urgency table happens when it's urgent. What I mean is like
when you have a lot of things you need to
when
cipher
I'm
through?
really stressing out. When
Okay.
I'm like getting home like late at night, I'm like, man, like stuff's about to go down. Like I don't know what to do with my life. Like I'm
questioning all of your
questioning
decisions
my
up until
whole
this point.
existence, my like
Yeah.
like 5 years of existence.
Mercury's in retrograde and
Mercury's in retrograde. So yeah, it's whenever things are actually getting busy and too complicated for me. I think I really do it like once every 4 months because I've been doing pretty good with planning. But other than that, I don't quite use it as much. But it's a good way to start because it's really short and it's really quick. And it makes a lot of sense. Do you actually, so when you plan stuff, do you go, how do you stick to it? Like in the morning, do you look at the stuff you got to do? Do you carry your planner with you? It's on your phone, of course. But how often do you look at it? And how flexible are you with it?
Yeah, so I guess my planner takes the form of a to-do list, I suppose. And I use an app called Evernote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a really useful note app, and so it.
Is that an elephant one? The
Yeah,
green
the
elephant one?
green, the elephant.
Evernote. All right.
Yeah, and it actually does a lot of cool stuff. probably more than I know about. But I use it primarily for my to-do list just because it syncs from my phone to my computer, and I can look at them from either one.
Cool.
And so that is something that I compile. I used to do weekly, but I find myself doing it more specifically now. So more on
The to-do list.
Yes.
Okay.
So I used to do it on a weekly basis, and I used to look at my whole week in advance, and I used to see the tasks that I was going to foresee myself needing to get done. And that worked for me for a while. But lately, what I've been doing is whenever I have a given session of unplanned time that I know I want to be productive in, I will put all of the tasks that need to get done in that time. And then that's when the list will
shorten.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. How do you determine what deserves to go on your to-do list?
So,
and what doesn't?
I guess in a very similar fashion to your square, it has a lot of the same criteria, but it just takes the form of a list. So it'll be like, I have something due tomorrow, and it's very important. It will go at the top. And then subsequently, other things will go under it that are important, and then less so until you get to the bottom. And usually with those unimportant and not urgent things, I will just leave them off the list. And I usually try not to put anything too leisurely on the to-do list.
Okay.
If you understand what I'm saying. So I like to leave, I guess, serious
do you
things.
just leave your, like, I guess your self-intended things out of your list? Does that make sense?
Yes. So the way that I've been doing my to-do list lately is that I'll sit down before I'm going to do work, and that is when the to-do list gets made. And then from then on is when I will follow the list. And then I will deal with the other things separately.
I see.
Yeah, so that way I'm not feeling like I'm carrying around my work with me, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for listening. You're going to hear from Manuel a lot more. Manny, thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you, Luis. It's very nice to speak with you all finally.